Military families have incredible stories of perseverance while navigating frequent moves, deployments, food insecurity, transitioning out of the military, and more. This is the place for them to share those stories, highlighting unique experiences of military families. Welcome to the Professional Dependent Podcast. All right, man. So you and I have known each other since, or we first met, I guess you should say, like in what was that, 2016 or 17 at the it was supposed to be a triathlon camp, became a swim
Yeah,
camp,
yeah.
and like I know for me personally, like, I was immediately attracted to you because of like your like just everything about you. You're like you're a selfless person. I told Kelly, I said you're probably one of the most selfless people I've ever met.
Hmm.
Like you are always thinking about what can I do for others. And so I've been following you for a while, but why don't you introduce yourself to the professional dependent audience?
Yeah. So I'll do my best to keep it short, but
Take as much
uh,
time as you need.
yeah, um I was in the Army, spent most of my time in Third Special Forces Group. I was a Green Beret there. Um, and then after my time in the Army, I was a contractor for a couple of years, still deploying, supporting special operations. And then really from that time forward, I've been involved in the veteran nonprofit space. And then, entrepreneurship has been a thing that I've been involved in as well. That's kind of been woven throughout, but that's kind of high level, my background.
Right. That's good because we met. Whenever we met, you were on staff with Team Red, White, and Blue, Team RWB.
Yeah, I think I had probably just started, or was fairly new staff wise. I think at
Okay.
that point I'd been a volunteer for 3 or 4 years, but had just come onto the staff recently before we did that camp.
And you were working with is that what you were working? You were a cadre with GoRuck. Isn't that how you kind of got the name was with of cadre CT?
Yeah, I still am a cadre with GoRuck.
Okay.
I still run, I don't know, anywhere from, I guess it's varied the last couple of years, but maybe 3 or 4 events a year.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started with GoRuck in 2015, I think in that first year I ran close to 50 events,
Oh
something
wow,
like that.
that's a lot.
And yeah, I was every weekend I was doing something with GoRuck for
Mm-hmm.
that first year. And then once I got more involved on the staff side with RWB, there's a lot of travel with that
Right.
and visiting chapters and things. And I couldn't layer more travel on top of, already being gone kind of thing. And so I've just been fortunate enough to be able to still run a few events here and there. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it's been great still connecting with that community. And I was in Pennsylvania maybe about a month ago, running some events there, and then last year got to do an event in Fort Worth, and um, there's a anniversary event for Special Forces in Colorado Springs that I was able to go out and do, and a couple other events in San Francisco. So it's just not nearly as much as what I was doing before. Like I said, just a couple events a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're the whole reason why I bought an actual GoRuck rucksack because you had like three of them at that triathlon camp. You're like, no, I'm telling you, these are great bags. And I was like, okay. And I bought one. I
Yeah,
was like, crap, he was right. This is a great bag. So I still have the first two that I bought. Like they're
yeah,
practically look brand new.
yeah. We bought my son the kids ruck
Nice.
um, when he started kindergarten. I don't think they make these anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the kids' bags, like that you find elsewhere. I mean, and kids are hard on stuff anyways.
Right.
They won't last a school year, maybe, is what you'll get out of them, and then they're wrecked. But this kid's ruck, I mean, it's now to the point to where my son's in sixth grade now, and the bag's still totally fine,
Right.
but he's just outgrown it, and
Right.
now we've got him a rucker. But yeah, the stuff is quality. It's super durable, and um, yeah, if anything ever happens to it, you have the lifetime guarantee. So Yeah, been great.
So one of the things that I've been dying to ask you is you always you always find, or it seems to me on my side of it that I always see you involved in like the next thing. Like you do something, it starts doing really well, and you find yourself in the next thing. So like you were, whenever we first met again, you were with GoRuck, you were with RWB. I actually didn't know you were still with GoRuck. I know it was on your Facebook page, but I
Yeah.
also know you're like super into social media. So I was like, knowing Chris, he didn't change it, but so that's cool that you're still
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
But so how have you been able to kind of keep that forward look and pivot from one thing to the next, but still like it always seems to be interconnected because you're always giving back to the veteran community, and I know that has a lot to do with your experience in the Army Special Forces, being a veteran yourself, but you're always finding a way to do something but still give back. Like how has that looked for you?
Yeah, I would say in general, I think um it's it probably just has to do with how I'm wired. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that I mean it's hard for me to shift my mindset elsewhere. So and somebody pointed this out to me about a week ago is that they pointed out that I'm very purpose driven. Like
Mm-hmm.
there has to be a lot of purpose behind whatever I'm doing. And that is true. So I think it's not exciting to me or doesn't have much meaning, or I don't think I can do it very long if there's not a whole lot of purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And and especially now, I mean, there's been uh, I've grown so much as a person over the last however many years, but really in the last couple years, just I feel like I've in some ways am a totally different person. There's been so much growth internally, but I think that I want, and these things that I learn and these things that are making my life better, I want to share that with other people.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something in me that I want other people to have these same kinds of things that I've found for myself. And so, um, I can't say it's intentional necessarily where I end up. It's not like I've had this 10-year plan of where I'm going to go here and do
Right.
this kind of thing. It just seems to be what ends up happening, and then I just kind of go with it.
Now you just brought up your personal growth, and I was going to get to that in a minute, but since you brought it up, let's go ahead and dive into that a little bit because I think you and I have had a couple of conversations about some of the things that you've done to help yourself kind of get to where you are now. Um, and I know part of that was with the organization vets that you're a part of, the
Right.
veterans experiencing or veterans exploring
Exploring.
treatment solutions.
Yeah.
Um, can you kind of talk about that a little bit and kind of how that has helped you from dealing with dealing with yourself where you were and then finding that growth and that drive to realize, okay, I'm not my best self here, I need to get over here. And how did that work?
Yeah. So really once from the time that I left contracting and then, and this is 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, when I left contracting and then moved back to Texas and basically walked away from that life forever is when I recognized that the wheels were coming off, and there were a lot of things I'd say physically, emotionally that just hadn't dealt with or just kind of like had put off to the side and was just trying to go for as long as I could, and then now all this stuff was catching up, and um and then it was just trying to figure out, navigating all of that, and that's really where this whole healing journey, I would say, started, and it continues to be. I would say, like, I don't have a whole lot of hobbies, but I would describe this as one of my hobbies is just learning about health and all of these things that you can do that I mean, will allow me to get the
Mhm.
most out of life because I I I've seen this video of this 92-year-old guy who's a rock climber, and then at 92 years old he's still climbing.
Right.
And I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to be that guy. Is I want to squeeze every bit of life, out of my time here on Earth. Like
Right.
and I want to figure out what it is that I can do that's going to allow me to do that. And so really from that time that it's like recognizing 10 years ago that things were not where I wanted them to be is just doing my own research and um, just continually, I've gone down the path of many different things, everything from some non-traditional stuff to some very traditional
Mhm.
like medication, all this stuff. Um and I put in a lot of work on myself, and I was able to move the needle some, but I would say that um and that's part of how I found Veterans Exploring
Mhm.
Treatment Solutions, was this research of like, seeing what other people were going through, what they did to better themselves, and veteran or not, because I think there's a lot of overlap in a lot of these things, even though some people might not say that. But um, you can have never served and still deal with trauma or you know abuse from the past or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, there's still all of these things that someone who's not been in the military can still experience and go through. And sometimes it can be even much more difficult. I know folks that have lost a parent at a young age. And um, I mean, it's got to be tremendously difficult to go through and process and all that, and then continue on with your life.
Mhm.
Um, so, um, but through, just this my own research found um, someone who, I forget what the trauma was. It might have been some past like sexual abuse or something like that that they had um, experienced. And, similar kind of thing. They've gone through this gamut of stuff
Mhm.
trying to get past it and to heal, and just weren't able to find something to really move the needle. And what I read about their story was they had probably gone down to, I mean, this is several years ago now, so like
Mhm.
the details are not going to be exact, but
Right.
ultimately they had probably gone down to Peru or somewhere and then did a series of ayahuasca
Okay.
ceremonies. And at that time, I was like, oh, I've never heard of ayahuasca before.
Mhm.
And then started researching more about that and learned that, it's a psychedelic
Mhm.
that people have, I mean, ancient cultures have used for healing and all kinds of
Oh yeah.
things that, Westerners are starting to use it for it now. But in learning about ayahuasca, I learned about, I mean, all of these other plant medicines that have been used to heal people,
Mhm.
and started in, and then some of the other synthetic ones, like started learning about MDMA, um, psilocybin, which is a mushrooms, which is
Yeah.
a plant medicine.
Right.
All these different psychedelics and that people were using um, for healing. And I found a nonprofit that sends veterans to do ayahuasca ceremonies, and I'd gone through their application process and everything, and um, had plane tickets and everything to go down to Peru
Mhm.
to go do this, and had my negative COVID test. I was like, you know, less than 3 days out from flying, and and then the whole country of Peru shut back down. This was all
Mhm.
like COVID time
Right.
frame. So things were kind of like fluctuating back and forth on restrictions, and it was still early on in that. And so the whole country shut down, wasn't able to go. And, and they basically said that you could come to Peru, but you may be stuck there for
Right.
weeks on end, which really didn't matter anyways, because the um, host for the ceremonies and all that they were shutting down.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
it didn't matter. But I told the guy who was coordinating all of it, I said, I was like, hey, here's my availability for the
Hmm.
next like 6 months. Let me know if something comes up. And didn't hear anything for a while. And a few months later, he um, told me, he's like, hey, I have an opportunity for you to do ibogaine, and it's in Mexico. And
Hmm.
I was like, what is ibogaine? Like, I'd never heard of it.
Right.
And I had read about all of these different psychedelics. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing research and looking at like real studies and things,
Hmm.
as well as like personal accounts, and but had never, and which caused me to learn about all these different ones, but never heard of ibogaine.
Hmm.
And so I started doing some research on it after he told me about it, and learned that it's probably the most powerful plant psychedelic that is out there. Um, it comes from the iboga shrub that grows in Western Africa, and it's extracted from the root bark. And the Bwiti people have been using it for, potentially thousands of years. For
Pretty much
Yeah,
forever.
yeah, and it's a part of their culture. It's
Hmm.
used for um, these kind of rites of passage,
Hmm.
and they also use it for, um, I mean, emotional trauma as well.
Hmm.
And so I, learned all that, and then I started. I mean, there was very little research that was out there at the time on it, but one of the things that I saw was that um, it was used in the West for heroin addiction.
Hmm.
In a way, it didn't really come to the States until, I think, man, it may have been like 20 years ago or something like that, 25 years ago, plus or minus,
Hmm.
So it really hasn't come to the West until recently. And then there was a guy who was a heroin addict, and I think he was just taking in whatever kinds of drugs, he's just
Hmm.
strung out. And um, I probably had the thought of like, hey, I'm just going to die doing drugs one of these days, and
Right.
had no real care for life or anything. And somehow he got a hold of ibogaine, and um, you know, after he had finished going through ibogaine, taking it himself, um, his whole world was changed. And he also noticed that he no longer had a heroin addiction.
Hmm.
And so really from there, that's where it kind of spread as this like cure for any kind of opioid, heroin type addiction. And that's what it was used for quite a bit. Um, and yeah, actually, even one of the facilitators, um, when he started doing this maybe 10 years or more ago, 10 or 15
Hmm.
years ago, and he was treating some veterans who had heroin addiction. He was putting them through ibogaine treatment for that, and then following up with them. They're like, yeah, we no longer have this heroin addiction, but
Hmm.
also they're like, my PTSD is gone as
Hmm.
well. And which I've since learned that a lot of trauma, or I'm sorry, a lot of addiction is generally always linked to some kind of trauma.
Right.
It's, and I mean, my perspective on how I view people has changed entirely. As an example, you know, someone across the street there, I'm at work and there's a gas station right behind me, and
Hmm.
there's one day there's this woman that I mean, looked like she's probably meth addict kind of thing, and
Hmm.
needed money and to pay for gas and all this. And there's the old me would have been like, man, what a junkie, what a
Hmm.
waste of a human, that kind of thing. And I look at it very different now, is that, that person is not strung out on whatever because they grew up in a great home life and
Right.
had loving parents and went to a great school and their life was great and they just decided to totally trash it.
Hmm.
I'm certain that's not what happened. I'm sure there's something along the way and that happened, and addiction is a way of coping with whatever that was. They're just trying to get through life dealing with whatever happened to them in the past. And but anyways, circling back, so uh kind of like moving forward with that story with ibogaine. Um, I ended up getting, part of my research, I found vets,
Hmm.
and um, that whole connection to do ibogaine, it didn't work out because it was a part of a documentary. Is
Hmm.
what they're like, hey, they'll send you, you'll have a slot,
Right.
and everything will be covered, but you just have to be comfortable being around cameras because they're
Hmm.
filming this whole documentary. They're like, you don't have to be in it, but you just have to be,
Hmm.
okay with cameras being around. And I was like, that's fine. I don't want to be in the documentary,
Hmm.
but if they want to film around me, that's fine. And I talked to the maybe producer or something, and turns out like it's too difficult for them to do that,
Right.
to film around me. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna be on camera, because at that time I was extremely private about this whole thing,
Right.
because of, there's potential judgment and everything. And really, in my mind, like I knew no one who had done something similar,
Hmm.
no one personally that had done anything like this. And I had planned to go do this, take whatever benefits I got,
Hmm.
and then just go live my life. And
Right.
um, but because when I was researching ibogaine, I found vets, and then ultimately was recommended to apply through vets, and really thought that was just like a, hey, you can't come do this documentary
Hmm.
thing, but here's something to like kind of pacify you, filling out this application.
Right.
And you know, um, but it was maybe few weeks later that I heard back, and was accepted as a grant recipient, and would ultimately go down to Mexico to do ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT, which was a part of that
Hmm.
treatment protocol. And um, it totally changed my life. And is really a turning point in my life. I feel, and it's hard to even summarize the changes. And I want to, I guess, highlight two things with that. Is that yes, the going through medicine was just such a impactful thing for me, and kind of this catalyst to
Hmm.
greater healing and this change in my life. But um, I don't want people. But the other thing I want to highlight is that there's a tremendous amount of work, in air
Right.
quotes, that I've done since that really has nothing to do with what I mean, it's just stuff that I'm doing on my own
Hmm.
that continue to like allow me to grow as a person and like propel myself forward. And so it's, to me, it's two part. It's not only the experience itself, but it's what you do afterwards.
Right.
But I will say that, Vets has now had over 700 special operations guys go through treatment, and on a weekly basis, and it never gets old.
Hmm.
I hear of guys that, they are before going down to treatment are there's substance abuse issues,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's traumatic brain injury, some kind of emotional trauma, there's suicide, maybe attempts or
Mm-hmm.
ideation. Guys are like at the very end. I mean, a number of guys that are like that I've known that are like at the very end. They're like, if this doesn't work,
Right.
like I'm going out into a field and ending my life afterwards. And and then they come out of treatment. That's their point they're at before going in. And when they
Mm-hmm.
come out, are just full of life. Nothing, they want nothing more than to live and
Mm-hmm.
experience this life. And they're free of addiction and they're able to move past whatever trauma. And we now know that because Vets is doing tons of research on guys going through, and from brain scans, we now know that it is physically healing the
Mm-hmm.
brain. So there's not just the emotional side of things, but it's also healing physical damage that's been
Right.
done to the brain. And um, and so it's just super impactful. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to even put into words, like, for my own self, what the changes and what I experienced, other than to say that, yeah, it's just been a total game changer for me.
I know. So I've got a good friend of mine in Alaska. His name is Pearson. He was in the Marine Corps, and whenever he got out of the Marine Corps, he had pretty severe PTSD, and he has shared the story with anybody that asked, that I'll sit and listen to him. So I've got no problem telling his story here. But he went through the VA's process of handling PTSD, which was here's some medication, go, it'll help fix you.
Right.
And eventually they're like, okay, well this course of medication has run as should be over, you should be fine now. And basically what it did was it got him hooked on opioids.
Yeah.
And he went from doing that to becoming a heroin addict. So
Mm.
here's a guy in his early 20s that through the course of traditional Western medicine became a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And the thing that he said, he finally looked at himself in the mirror one day and realized, this is not who I am. And he started smoking marijuana. But smoking marijuana gave him enough of a relief that he didn't feel the need to go shoot heroin.
Mm.
And it was actually helped him start working through some of his issues with PTSD. And I saw
Yeah.
a really cool documentary. You mentioned a documentary earlier. This has been, I think I actually saw this when I was in college, and nobody ever believes me when I saw it. But there was a lady in Canada that she was using pure MDMA on Canadian soldiers and also anybody from
Mm.
America that could go up and find her. And she had measured out the dose. It wasn't like a hero dose. It was like just a little bit more than a micro dose of MDMA,
Yeah.
but it was able to allow the soldiers and all these other service members to face what their trauma was, but then work through it, as opposed to seeing the trauma as they were talking through it and then freezing up.
Yeah.
They're actually able to work through it. And I know a little bit about ibogaine because the things that plant medicine can do for people just fascinates me, and I really wish it was something that more people would look into.
Yeah.
But you're dead on. Like the ibogaine, it literally fixes the connections that different drugs and other trauma breaks down, and that's what kind of helps people move forward. And it's not one of those things that a lot of people hear this and like, oh well, so and so, they're just wanting to do this so they can say, oh look, I'm using this and it fixed me, because they want to use drugs. That's not what it is. It's about starting that healing process and being able to move forward.
Yeah. And ibogaine's a little bit different than a lot of the other psychedelics
Right.
because there's quite a few. I mean, all the guys that go through vets, there's medical screening and
Right.
everything that has to take place. There's certain medications and even
Mm-hmm.
over the counter stuff that you can't be taking.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff that goes into the preparation in order for it to be, safe.
Right.
But because it is so powerful, guys are typically on the medicine sometimes 20 hours,
Hmm.
and it's not uncommon to hear someone say, that they were seeing visuals for 30 hours kind of
Right.
thing. And so, and all the while, like, I mean, as guys are going through treatment, like the heart's being monitored,
Hmm.
there's an IV poured in. When I went through, there's a doctor or nurse that is there in the room with
Hmm.
you, monitoring you 24/7. Um, and it's not something that anyone would ever want to do, like on a Saturday night kind of thing,
Right.
like a party kind of thing. Like um, it's not typically any aspect of it is enjoyable,
Right.
Um,
Because you're doing it for it's there's a purpose behind it. It's not
right,
I want to go do this thing because I've heard it was cool. It's there's a point that I'm at that I realize I need something to help me get through this.
right,
Otherwise it's not going to be good for me or anybody else.
right. And yeah, so it's yeah, and I think, and I still don't understand this, but I know that other psychedelics like people have used recreationally, which um I'm not, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. And maybe because my first interaction with it was in the context of this is like to do work on
Right.
yourself and to heal, and really take, what you get out of it from there.
Hmm.
And that's your opportunity to, have this, in a way, kind of a clean slate
Right.
to, okay, what do you want to do, or what do you want to change going
Hmm.
forward? And um, yeah, and that's what's been really impactful for me, is to be able to um, kind of be freed of some things, and um, choose what I want to do in my life
Hmm.
going forward. And yeah, but it's just been super, super powerful for me, as well as so many others.
Right. And I love that you mentioned that it's not about just doing it the one time, being like, okay, now the work stops. It's like it's almost like we're giving you this starting point, and like you said, now what are you going to do with it? Like now it's like now the work starts because like it's almost like somebody saying, "All right, I'm going to help you lose." This is probably a horrible analogy. I'm going to help you lose 100 pounds. Once you get to the 100 pounds, you've got now. What are you going to do going forward?
Yeah,
Are you
no,
going to go back to what you were doing and gain all the weight back? Or are you going to continue to do the work and build yourself into the person you want to be?
yeah, I think that's a great analogy. Um, because, and I put it in air quotes earlier,
Mm-hmm.
work, because um, even at the year mark, so now it's been over 2 years since I went through,
Okay.
and at the year mark, kind of, I spent some time reflecting back over, that past year, and I did the same thing again at the 2 year mark,
Mm-hmm.
kind of reflecting back. But at the year mark, my wife said this, and a couple other people, they're like, man, you've just put in so much work over the
Mm-hmm.
past year. And it kind of like made me think, because I was like, it doesn't feel like work to
Right.
me, especially because when I came back, when I got home after treatment, I was like, I feel so good that I'm going to do whatever it is I need to do
Mm-hmm.
to continue, like, moving forward this way.
Right.
And so I think maybe in a way I'm like ultra regimented about some things in my life, where maybe it's like a little bit too much for some people, but there's certain things that I do every day that I started doing when I got back, and it's now 2 years later, that I still do every day. And I feel it contributes to a lot of my overall health, and just, I would say just continuing to grow, and maintaining,
Right.
what I've got. And um, and yeah, like I said, it's not necessarily for everybody. I think some people maybe pick a thing or two that they
Hmm.
want to change, and um, but for me, like I think that's kind of my personality too, is that a lot of things like I'm either all in or not, you
Right.
know.
If there's one thing I know about you, you are either 100% in or 100 or just not interested at all. Like there's
Yeah,
no, you are
yeah,
not one of those. I'm gonna put my toe in it and see if I like it. It's dive in or don't get in at all.
yeah,
Now,
exactly.
I know a little bit about your morning routine for through social media. What and you, I have a feeling you've probably been doing the morning routine for a while now. So, what does your daily routine, your non-negotiables for yourself look like in the morning?
So I wouldn't say non-negotiables, because if these things don't happen,
Mm-hmm.
I think people could uh, uh, adopt a mindset of that now my day is not going to be good because I did not do these things as a part of
That's,
my morning routine.
that's fair.
But I would say um, this is what I do pretty well every day. I would say some of these over the past 2 years, I've maybe missed like 3 days of this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of these things are a little bit newer, but the first thing that I do every morning is I spend time in meditation, and that's changed over the course of time. Like starting out, I was like, okay, 10 minutes. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do 10 minutes, and I would struggle through 10 minutes and then would slowly build upon that. And it wasn't until maybe around the year mark is when I really started doing hour and 15-minute
Right.
meditations, um and then now that's kind of what I aim for each morning, is about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't always work out like that. Maybe, end up getting in 30 minutes or something. But for the most part, I shoot for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But I also go to bed pretty early, and then so I can get up early to do this. But I started doing this right after I got back from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and just started a meditation practice, and I've gone through several different meditation courses since, and how I meditate seems to continue to evolve. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge part of my life, and depending on what's going on throughout the day, sometimes in the evening, if I can grab like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, something like that, I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll do a short meditation. But those are just kind of like opportunity, as those opportunities arise. But first thing in the morning, do a meditation, and then what is kind of new now is I started doing cold plunges.
Mm-hmm.
I think in January, maybe beginning of January, and um, didn't know if I would like it, and turns out I don't, but I still do it anyway. It's like there's a lot that's come out of it. It's a lot of benefits that have come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And initially I bought like the $90 thing,
Right.
and um, which was working in the wintertime, but I was still having to change out the water every 4 days because it would get gross. And
Right.
um, and then I eventually built my own, and um, and so I do that. I do about 3 minutes every morning,
Mm-hmm.
which is not long, but you only need 11 minutes cumulatively a week.
I struggle with that
Yeah.
word too. I don't know why.
Yeah. Um, and so 11 minutes total a
Mm-hmm.
week, and in order to get all the benefits. And so um, I just do 3 minutes. Um, and then after that, once I get to work, I mean, there's a few things that I'll do right away, but then I spend some time journaling based off some positive psychology prompts. And I've been journaling ever since I got back from Mexico. You know, I'd say 6 days a week, give or
Right
take.
on.
Um, so almost every day
Mm-hmm.
I journal. some days it's, I spend a few minutes answering the same prompts. Some
Hmm.
days I do that and write about maybe dreams that I've had, or sometimes just stuff that's on my mind that I'm thinking about that I just need to get down on paper. And then I was doing this before going down to Mexico, so this wasn't new, but I think this is pretty instrumental in my life, and that's some form of exercise.
Hmm.
And that's kind of varied over the years of what I've done, but CrossFit seems to, or something CrossFit like
Right.
seems to be kind of my go-to, as it tends to, you know, you're not necessarily running only, which
Right.
makes you great for if you want to go run a race, or if you want to go like, you know, hike somewhere or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, but in other words, like I feel like it allows me to do a bunch of different things. Maybe I'm not like great at a
Hmm.
bunch of different things, but it allows me to do a bunch of different things with a level of fitness that I feel pretty comfortable with. Um, so so exercise, and then the other is um, I have as a part of the program with vets, you get linked up with an integration coach, a preparation integration coach, and this person will talk you through like helping you to prepare to do
Hmm.
medicine. Because I mean, most of these guys, they're all former soft guys.
Okay.
And so, like, these are all military guys. You're drug
Hmm.
tested all the time and everything.
Right.
Like, um, this stuff is so unfamiliar.
Hmm.
You don't really, most people don't have any kind of experience with psychedelics or anything. And so, what to know going into it, how to prepare, like
Hmm.
these are totally unknowns, and that's what that coach helps with you on the preparation side. And then on the back side, helping you to um, maybe if they're helping you with any changes or anything
Hmm.
like that that you want to make, um, going through some of the insights that you get,
Hmm.
and um, yeah, I mean, just really coaching you through that whole process before and after. And so I started, so I was assigned a coach, and uh, my coach is just phenomenal,
Hmm.
is the best, and um, I would say has been very instrumental in like my continued growth,
Hmm.
um, because, and it doesn't have to necessarily be someone who's a professional in this kind of thing, but being able to have someone that you can bounce things off of that can also see some of these blind spots,
Right.
that you're just totally missing, and point those out to you, as well as, I mean, there's so many things that I had no idea about that. Um, I mean, something simple as like a book recommendation,
Hmm.
and because it just opened up a whole new world to me, that I thought what I was seeing was all of reality. And I mean,
Right.
even neuroscience says this, that, we do not experience more than 99% of reality.
Right.
So, and I mean, like, this gets into like a whole deep topic, but there's just so many things that I thought I knew about, which I really didn't. I just realized that I don't know much of anything. Um, and so I've continued to work with my coach, and meet with her like on a pretty regular basis, and that's
Hmm.
been super impactful. And I mean, it's been everything from different meditations to um, like uh, I'd never heard of Kundalini yoga before, which is not the typical yoga, that what I call Western yoga, which
Okay.
is where there's a lot of like poses and
Hmm.
movements, and it's almost more of like, there definitely is a physical aspect to it,
Right.
but I learned that, I mean, yes, that is a yoga that is done in the East, but the primary reason for doing that type of yoga was to be able to hold these different, be able to sit in these different
Hmm.
positions and be in meditation for longer periods of time. That was the whole purpose of it. So it's kind of like that type of yoga was a lead into some of these others, like
Okay.
Kundalini yoga, where it's more of meditation, breath work
Hmm.
type of work that you're doing. And, but so yeah, I would say those are some of the things that have been, I mean, some part of my daily routine, but
Hmm.
also some things that I do um, that are maybe more on sometimes monthly basis that um, have been super impactful as a
Hmm.
part of my life and like continuing to go forward. And another thing that I work on, and this is a like sometimes like minute by minute, hourly
Hmm.
type thing, is my mindset. I've always been really big on mindset,
Yeah.
but my mindset has really shifted as well, and I still am continually working on that.
Hmm.
And that was like a big thing that came out of it for me is that I recognize this maybe externally in interacting with others, there was kind of more of a positive type
Hmm.
attitude, but internally, I was just so negative.
Hmm.
Like, I'm surprised that I got anything accomplished. Like, I was just so awful towards myself
Uh-huh.
internally. And and now I'm continually working on different aspects of my mindset and just
Hmm.
shifting towards this more positive attitude, not only towards others, but my own self.
Hmm.
Kind of like how I mentioned how just viewing people different now, where before I could easily write off this chick at the gas station
Right.
as some loser junkie,
Hmm.
when now it seems like, hey, this is a human being too,
Hmm.
and this person didn't just I'm sure there's more to the story than what a lot of people would just assume is, just a worthless person.
Right. I mean, I that's so I've always kind of had a different view on people that have drug issues because my oldest cousin, he he died with a needle in his arm. He and
Hmm.
whenever he died, he left behind, two very small kids. And we we look at I tend to look at things pretty kind of like what you were saying. Like I look at somebody, I'm like, you know what, that person didn't wake up one day and go, you know what'd be a great idea today? I'm gonna shoot meth. That's a fantastic
Yeah,
idea today. Like that doesn't happen. There are things that happen in people's lives that they go, being high on this substance feels better than dealing with this. And that's how a lot of that starts. And people aren't brave enough to stop and go, or they just don't know what the resources are to sit there and go, I need help to fix this so I don't have to
yeah,
do this other thing anymore.
yeah. I'm not sure that even the traditional methods are even adequate in helping
Mm-hmm.
large numbers of people, large percentages of people. And we see that, I think, just in the, or maybe lack of success rates, where maybe someone goes to like a rehab center or something like that, and then a certain period of time, you know, they're they're back into whatever substance.
Yep.
And uh, something I forgot to mention, because there are so many things, there are so many changes,
Mm-hmm.
um, is that I forgot to mention this is that um, eating healthier. I mean, I guess it had been on on our radar for sure, but especially my wife has now been on the same healing journey.
Okay.
And so, and she went through as a grant recipient through vets, maybe like 6 months or so after I did, eight
Okay.
months after I did. And, and one of the things that came out of it for her, I mean, she totally changed up the way she was eating, which was
Hmm.
like an added benefit for me because if she is eating so much healthier,
Right.
like we're just eating that same way.
Right.
And so that was also like something else on a daily basis, just
Hmm.
trying to eat as healthy as possible. And then, which we're not perfect at it by any means at
Hmm.
all, um, still eat like pizza and stuff like that from time to time. And
Hmm.
it's not perfect, but doing what we can with that. And then um, the other, and I guess this kind of ties into it, is um, prior to going down to Mexico, like sleep was a huge issue for me.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty protective of my sleep now.
Hmm.
And when I got back, oh, actually, I wasn't able to sleep right away, but I
Right.
felt so good. I was like, I don't care,
No, I don't need to sleep right now.
and um, but eventually, like that kind of leveled off,
Hmm.
and I was sleeping a ton. And um, like the first maybe 2 weeks, I was sleeping around like 12 hours a night. And at first, I was like, okay, well, this is great. Like I'm sleeping now. Like I'm
Right.
just gonna let this happen. And after a week, I'm like, all right, this seems to be a little excessive, like,
Half of my day is gone.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let this go on for another
Hmm.
day. And then like around the 2 week mark is when it started to level off. And I kind of took it as like, okay, this is my body recovering after
Right.
so much time of not sleeping. And before, like, really the only way that I was able to really sleep was some kind of medication from the
Hmm.
VA, which I knew it's not a long-term solution and does
Right.
more damage in the long run, to ultimately you're at a
Hmm.
point where, I mean, nothing is going to work for you to
Right.
sleep. And so it was either that or alcohol.
Hmm.
And um and but really, like, once I was able to sleep, I was like, I don't need this anymore,
Right.
and also too, um I had tons of energy throughout the day because I
Hmm.
was getting sleep. I was like, I don't feel like I need any caffeinated coffee
Right.
or energy drinks,
Hmm.
any of that stuff. And now, 2 years later, I still have not had a drop of alcohol
Hmm.
or any kind of caffeinated coffee or energy drinks or anything like that. And I think people would also say that I think that's maybe where some areas where people would say that that's like real work.
Right.
And I could see that. I could never have done this before,
Right.
but like it hasn't been much work for
Hmm.
me. On the caffeine side of things, I just feel no desire. Like I have not had any kind of desire at all
Hmm.
to have anything like that. And then on alcohol, I would say for the most part, I just don't feel like I need it.
Right.
I mean, that's been a really interesting journey for me because um there are so many things that I did with alcohol
Hmm.
that I had to like, what is this going to be like without drinking?
Right.
Like this is going to be kind of weird. And so there was a lot to process on the back end for
Hmm.
myself with alcohol. And I would say like I still don't have much of a desire for it. Um, the I would say the only exception is not because I want it, it's that sometimes I feel like um, I'm on a basketball court, everyone's playing
Hmm.
basketball, and I'm holding a tennis racket, like
Right.
I feel like there's like some situations, and there's been very, very few of those,
Hmm.
where it's like, I feel a little bit out of place not drinking,
Right. But
And
do you think that's more of like a societal pressure, like everybody else is having a beer, I should have one too, or because I can't see the kind of people that you would run with, like trying to be like Chris, why aren't you drinking? Like I can't really see that being too much of an issue for you.
you'd be surprised. I
I
had
probably would
someone,
be.
yeah, I had someone, I mean, and these are people that, I mean, very good friend of mine.
Hmm.
I'm still friends with him this to this day. but initially he made comments of like, he's like, you were more fun whenever you were drinking,
That's a
and
weird thing to say to somebody. Like, right? Like, that's a weird thing to tell. Like, you're more fun when you're drinking. Like, what? Why?
yeah. So I don't take that personally.
Right.
I take it as there's something. I think it has more to do with that person and what's going
Hmm.
on with them than it does with me. And and I think because, and I mean, they were joking, saying some of this stuff, but they're like, like, give me a call whenever you start drinking again or something
Hmm.
like that. Um, and then I've had some other friends that it was kind of hard for them to really adjust to me not drinking, you
Mm.
know. So, but I think that was more of what my life was before,
Right.
is where if a lot of the things that I was doing with other people involved alcohol, and
Hmm.
then like I still will go to bars and stuff like
Hmm.
that now, and I'm totally fine there. Um, but if all of a sudden I'm not like having the same fun that
Right.
they are, it's like initially I can see it being weird for them.
Hmm.
Yeah, and actually as a whole, not just the alcohol thing, but I would say the me that I was working on becoming was kind of difficult for people to take as a whole.
Right.
Uh, Even my wife,
Yeah.
because if you imagine someone who's carrying around, all of this junk, and there's
Mhm.
all that comes with it,
Right.
like your behaviors, your attitude, your mindset, and but then all of that's gone,
Right.
like it's in a way a different person, and um and that can be difficult even for the people that you're closest to. It can be
Mhm.
very weird. And I know that my wife was having conversations with family members and stuff about like, this is weird,
Right.
like I'm not mad about it, but it's real weird. And
Right.
I'm not sure how to take this or if it's going to wear off or,
Hmm.
and kind of waiting for like the old me to at
Right.
some point come through. So in general, I think it it was an adjustment, especially for the
Hmm.
people closest to. And I saw a lot of my old teammates. Some of them I hadn't seen in a decade,
Hmm.
from when I was on a team in the army, and I saw them maybe about a month ago, and we're out at a bar and stuff, meeting up before the next day promotion ceremony that we're all going to.
Hmm.
And there was, I think, still this perception of who I was 10
Right.
years ago, which is vastly different from the person that I am today. And, you know, adjusting to that,
Right.
which is, I would say at the core, I'm the same person. It's
Hmm.
just all of this other stuff that was there is out of the way, and like more of me is shining through, I would say.
So like the whenever you said that, I remembered, and I know I keep going back to our time in Austin, but that's the one time that you and I have been like in the same place for several days at a
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
And I remember we were walking somewhere. You had that giant backpack on, and then you had another backpack on top of that, like across your shoulders. And like we were
Uh-huh.
going, we were either getting on the bus or getting on the van for you to drive us somewhere. And whenever you were saying like you just dropped everything, like the image I had of myself in my head just then was you basically shedding this giant go ruck bag, taking off this other thing, like you being able to like let yourself stand up and breathe for like the
Yeah,
first time. Like that was the image
absolutely.
I just had in my head. Is like you finally letting go of all this stuff you're just carrying around and packing with you, and being like, okay, now I don't have to deal with this anymore. It's behind me. I can breathe. And I can
Yeah.
imagine how Becca must have felt whenever you came back from that, and you being like, having left all this baggage behind you that she has watched you carry for years.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be her like, what's going on here? Like what I can see that being confusing, but I can also see that she must have seen something incredible if she herself was like, if this worked this good for him, I'm willing to go through it to also help myself.
Yeah. So, and there's a number of things with that is that um, I would say the things that she experienced were different than me,
Right.
and a lot of it was from, I mean, things like, and I mean, she could speak more on this, but, being gone for 7 deployments,
Mm-hmm.
and just this continual cycle of, because what I was doing was high risk,
Right.
more so than some of the other jobs, but in the military. But so it was very much a real thing for her that I might not come back.
Right.
And then I'd go again, and then it's like I might not come back.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to cope, we adapt sometimes in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us, it was really just kind of shutting off some emotions
Mm-hmm.
and even though I had the opportunity to call Becca while I was
Mm-hmm.
deployed, things are a little bit different now with Zoom and
Right.
Skype and smartphones and all that. But um, I would maybe call once or twice on a deployment.
Mm-hmm.
I would rarely call. And that was just kind of like whenever I left, we both went into our modes of like,
Right.
hey, I have important stuff to do and I need
Mm-hmm.
to be focused on that. And she's like, okay, like she's gonna occupy herself with other
Mm-hmm.
things to not think about it. And so in a way, we're kind of like bottling up stuff for a little bit
Right.
over years and years and years. And not to mention like all of the things that like when the wheels were coming off for
Mm-hmm.
me that she was having to deal with. And in a lot of ways, I mean, an awful person. And um, and so then there's things that she would do to like cope with that
Right.
kind of thing. And um, not to mention that I think that a lot of people end up with their own, whether it's childhood trauma or
Mm-hmm.
things that we experience in life that for one reason or another like gets stuck with us
Right.
and we continue to carry. um, and so then over time like all the stuff like adds up.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I honestly never expected Becca to do something like this.
Right.
And um, and really like what you said, it's because she saw the benefits that I got.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I was like, hey, there's a spouse program as well through
Mm-hmm.
vets. And then kind of left it at that and just never
Right.
expected her to ever do it. And then maybe a few months later, she was asking for a copy of my DD 214 to
Mm-hmm.
apply and go through treatment. And um, which surprised me. And but yeah, I mean it's been, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through an experience like that. What she
Right.
did was psilocybin and 5-MeO DMT, but and it doesn't have to necessarily be through that type of experience,
Mm-hmm.
but both of us being on this same journey together um, has just been really meaningful. And I think, um, yeah, we're both continuing to grow
Mm-hmm.
like side by side, which has been awesome. And I mean, we continue to do things together like TRE, which is tension or trauma release exercises.
Okay.
Um, there's we went to an advanced meditation retreat, which
Mm-hmm.
was like a week long meditation retreat. Um, there's different courses and things. A lot of this stuff is offered through vets, like
Hmm.
as um, because it's not a like, hey, let's send you down to Mexico and
Right.
hope you have a good life. There's a lot of stuff on the preparation side
Mhm.
now. Like when I went through, um, there wasn't much in terms of wraparound support. There was the preparation, integration, coaching,
Right.
and maybe one other call that you could go to weekly.
Hmm.
And now there's something every single day of the week that you can attend, everything from meditation to group calls to like TRE, like I mentioned, is something that they're offering for the first time this weekend. Um, yeah, just tons of wraparound support and support for spouses, whether they go through medicine or not, but
Hmm.
to prepare them, hey, this is what your spouse is going to be going through and what to expect on the back end and all that. And so, but a lot of these things, to be on this path together, I mean, uh, I think it's just in some ways accelerating the growth that
Hmm.
we have as people.
I know one of the reasons why the first time I thought about having you and Becca as well on my podcast was, and you have to correct me on the timeline, but I think it was like 2 years ago. Y'all had won a shopping spree at Academy.
Yeah.
Was that like 2 years ago, or a little bit
Actually,
longer?
I think it was almost exactly 2 years ago. Very, very close
And
to exactly 2 years ago.
and I saw the video clip, and there was an interview, and there was at one part where y'all were being interviewed, and y'all accepted the shopping spree, but you were like, only if we can give it to a Gold Star family.
Right.
And whenever y'all said that, I immediately was like tearing up because of how many, we both know so many people that have been affected by and are unfortunately members of their Gold Star families. And I was like,
Right.
that's so awesome that they're doing that. And then whenever Becca said this was so important to me because I know that at any point in
Mm.
time I could have been on this side of it. Like I was like, I have got to talk to them because that was such a selfless. Like, because how many people would have been like, shopping spree at Academy, awesome, love it, and you're like, no, that's there's somebody else out there that needs this more than
Oh yeah.
us. And I
Yeah.
just it to me that spoke volumes about y'all.
Yeah. I remember what you're talking about with what Becca said
Mm-hmm.
is that, yeah, it's like I can almost see her face as she was talking about that, about how um, I was able to come home
Right.
where these other families, their loved one was not.
Mm-hmm.
And but a really good thing came out of it is that so it was a total of $5,000
Mm-hmm.
and it was split between two families.
Nice.
Um, and we got in touch with Soft Warrior Foundation. So I mean, it's a lot of Gold Star families
Right.
that they work with, and primarily their focus is education,
Mm-hmm.
making sure these Gold Star kids are taken care of when it comes to school,
Mm-hmm.
college and all that, and other things. But one of the families that we got linked up with um, um, was actually, I mean, he still is a student here at
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M, which is right across the street. And we ended up getting to meet. I mean, we didn't have to do this or anything, but um, we've got to spend a fair amount of time with one of those Gold Star kids, and
Nice.
um, great guy. And it's just been great, kind of having that
Mm-hmm.
that friendship now. And um, but we got to meet, more of his family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my wife helped with the younger brother getting it transferring into Texas A&M,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the remainder of the money went to another family. Actually, it was a family of it was a Green Beret um, who passed, and I want to say it's something like maybe 7 kids or something
Oh,
with
wow.
that family. It was a big family.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and they were able to use the gift cards
Hmm.
in um, their area where they were at.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I didn't see it as too much of a big deal. Um, but the other thing is that my son would have been in, I guess, fourth grade at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and we try and have like anything that I can take my family on, like I have
Right.
them there,
Right. For sure.
whether it's work related or not. And so we got him out of school for that. There's several other things that like we're like, hey, we want you to be a part of this.
Right.
We'll take him out of school for. And so we took him out of school for that. And I didn't realize the impact that seems to be burned into his brain.
Hmm.
That there's other like little things that they've done in class where it's like, hey, if you were given this, what would you do with it?
Right.
And you have to write about what you would do with it. And um, I and it seems to from that moment, meeting the Gold Star
Hmm.
family and um, you know, being able to hand this off to someone who could use it,
Right.
um, seems to really made an impact on him and kind of at least some of what he's thinking right now
Hmm.
in terms of like, if he's in kind of a similar situation where he's given something and somebody else more could use it,
Hmm.
really surprising to me. And I'm thankful that um, that stuck because sometimes I feel like I'm not sure what is like sticking, like I'm trying to like convey some value or, and I'm not sure if it's like really, if you're getting the point or not.
Buddy, that's all of us as parents, right? Like
Yeah,
that is serious. That's all of us as parents, right there. Is are we think we're doing the best we can with the information that we have.
right. Absolutely.
And how much of this is being conveyed and retained by our kids? So
Yeah, totally.
that's awesome. So I want to. I had to bring up that academy and the Gold Star thing because that has been sitting with me ever since I saw that. But I want to go back to the vets thing. You said that they
Yeah.
started doing a lot more kind of back end care. Is that something that is it because they were getting feedback from people going, hey, I wish we had a little bit more support and guidance on how to kind of keep this going? Is that anything that you had anything to do with as far as like, hey, I think we could keep doing this and keep moving this needle forward? How did that come about? Do you know?
Um, I think it came about because that is what is the right thing to do.
Right.
I mean, I think anything you don't want to like, okay, you're good today. Like, I hope you have a great life.
Yeah. Good, best of luck.
Like I think there always needs to be like, hey, you know, we've got you over the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some tools that can continue to set you up for success.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think it's just, it's the right thing to do. But when I went through, it was in some ways new.
Right.
I think I mean, according to the records that we have, um, I was the third Green Beret to go through treatment. There were
Okay.
a number of SEALs that had gone through before me, but as far as Army guys, um, very few had gone
Mm-hmm.
through before me, which was part of why how I knew no one who had done it.
Right.
And um, and so and and so I do part-time work for vets now.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came on to help, which was March of 22, um, I think I was maybe the third employee.
Okay.
There are like a number of contractors and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, but um, it was just kind of Marcus and Amber and you know one or two others
Mm-hmm.
and like a bunch of contractors that were really making everything happen. And so it's just in the grand scheme of things like very very young
Right.
organization. And so, and it continues to build out, like, and new offerings
Mm-hmm.
are coming about as the organization grows, as more funding is available,
Mm-hmm.
as more personnel are being able to be brought on to, you know, I mean, provide all of this wraparound
Mm-hmm.
support. So I don't think it was something that was ever out of mind. It was just the capability wasn't there
Right.
earlier on.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense because you don't want to, as much as people want to need the support, you don't want to offer something that you can't follow through with.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
and I mean there's quite a few people that they probably could go through and be totally fine,
Mm-hmm.
and but um and and those same people like that would be totally fine, like if there's even more that you can do that makes you even better,
Right.
like, or if for those that may need like a weekly call or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, so just varying levels of people, and being able to offer that support. I mean, it's just on both sides because it's not just on the back end. There's
Right.
a lot that is available to not only the grant recipient but the spouse as well,
Mm-hmm.
leading up to treatment. And then of course, not just for the grant recipient on the back end, there's lots of support for the spouses as well,
Mm-hmm.
and different calls that are available to them. And so regardless if they go through medicine or not.
Right. So on the is the back end support that vets offered, is that how you found that walking meditation thing that you did, or was that just something that came up?
Yeah. So um this might have been the spring of last year. I got connected with a guy who's now a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
He's a heart surgeon up in Nebraska, and he was trying to get some grant recipients involved in some more meditation offerings.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a part of VETS, has never gone through VETS, and um, yeah, I don't. He doesn't have a real connection with vets other
Mm-hmm.
than I would say he's just a great American and wants to support the military and veterans kind of
Right on.
thing. And he does do some work with the I think it's the Navy SEAL Future Foundation.
Okay.
He volunteers some time with them, and he was getting some guys from that foundation to go through a 3-day Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how he got connected with vets, but ultimately I was put in contact with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey, we have this opportunity to send some guys from vets to this meditation retreat with Dr. Joe," and we're talking about it, and like we're trying to make something work, and I'm like,
Right.
it's just the timeline's too short,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not going to happen. But he kept on, was like very persistent
Mm-hmm.
about it. I'm so glad he didn't give up. And so we kind of did this like almost like a trial of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we were able to get some guys together from vets to send them to that. And Beck and I were able to go and wanted to see, like, okay, is
Mm-hmm.
this worth it? Like, is
Right.
there value in it? And um and really, that, like, from that point, that was like a big turning point in my meditations, like really doing a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I say the meditations, I mean, that is a very true aspect of it, but there's so much more to what is being taught during those retreats.
Gotcha.
Um and really, I mean, a lot of life-changing stuff, and I'll touch more on that in a second. But so we did that, and then it's like, okay, now we want to offer a week-long intensive
Mm-hmm.
retreat, advanced retreat with Dr. Joe Dispenza. and we're able to send a group end of last year from vets, part from SEAL Future Foundation. And then we had another group, and Beck and I went with this group in Nashville earlier this year. And that's where we did that was part of it, was the walking meditations. There's different meditations that you go through. But there's a lot, it's hard to even put into words the Dr. Joe Dispenza work in general. There's a lot that is tied into meditation, a ton that's tied into neuroscience. Dr. Joe is a neuroscientist himself, and there's tons of research and ongoing research that they're doing, but it's a lot of transforming people's lives. And how I can illustrate that is that we've had, these grant recipients that just have amazing, powerful, life-changing experiences going through Ibogaine and 5-MeO in a few days time frame. And these same grant recipients going through a week-long advanced retreat with Dr. Joe said that was way more powerful than their medicine experience, which I would consider, a lot of people will say this, is that going through medicine was one of the most significant experiences of their entire life. And I would say that too. I would say probably in my top 2 experiences in life would be the week-long retreat with Dr. Joe and my medicine experience, probably the 2 most significant. And that's crazy to say that you would put that above like your own child being born or saving the life of another human, or the day that you got married, all like these are significant life experiences, no doubt, and super important to me. But to think that there's something that would even go above those, I think maybe that demonstrates a little bit of the value that you get out of it. And again, it's more to it than just meditation. It is really changing people's lives in a positive way.
And I wonder, for the people that said that they got more out of the meditation than they did their medicine experience, I almost wonder if they would have gotten as much out of the meditation had they not gone through the medicine first.
It's possible.
And the only reason why I say that is because I know, like for me, if I go into something and I don't have a lot of experience with meditation, I journal a lot. Like, to me, journaling is one of those things. It's the life hack I never knew I needed.
Yeah, it's
because
great.
it helps get cluttered thoughts out of my head and onto paper. And then once it's on paper, I can see it and I can start working on it. But like, I wonder if somebody's holding in baggage and they're trying to hold something in, would they be as receptive to the meditation?
Probably not.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, if you're sitting there holding all this stuff back, and the stuff that you're holding on because it's so traumatic to look at, without working on that first, would you be as open to the meditation?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's 2 categories of people. I think there's people that maybe they've had all this trauma, they are suffering in whatever way, and they go into a Dr. Joe retreat, never done a meditation in their life, and come out of it totally different.
Right.
I think a lot of the guys that vets sees come through the program are in this other category of have really tried a lot of other things, and this is almost like a last resort. And some of those guys prior to going to medicine are in such a bad spot that I think it would just be hard for them to be in a room with other people and focusing and really taking in the message
Right.
and, learning the techniques and all that stuff. Um, but I think if you're beyond being in such a, rough spot,
Mm-hmm.
there still is that possibility of someone who's never done a meditation or
Mm-hmm.
anything and maybe aren't even totally open to it,
Right.
because there is this other category of person where it's like, um, their spouse is totally into Dr. Joe, has been
Mm-hmm.
listening to the YouTube videos, like all this stuff, and then they get, their husband or wife,
Mm-hmm.
they drag them along with them to the thing, you know, and then that person that was drugged there is kind of like, I'm here, because my spouse wanted me to go,
Right.
like, I'll
They're
do it,
building
but
that
like,
wall.
I'm not really bought into any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like hocus pocus, whatever.
Right.
And sometimes that person gets more value out of it than the
Mm-hmm.
person who was bought in before ever showing up.
Yeah.
So, um, I think it helps with just about anything, to
Right.
approach with an open mind,
Right.
but um, but yeah, for some of these guys, they're sometimes in such a rough spot that I don't think they would have been able to sit there and focus and be in the room without it, just too many other things
Right.
distracting them.
Now, as with your time doing, the plant-based medicine and the meditation and working with vets, I know a lot of guys that are in the soft community, they almost have this, there's a stigma that these are the toughest guys on the planet. They're able to handle anything, whether they're there or out, nothing should be able to bother them. Do you think that with your work with vets, you're able to reach out to some of these guys that maybe are like, have gone through a lot of the things you've been through and help them work through and realize, hey, I need to take this next step to work on the
Yeah,
things that I wasn't ready to admit I needed to work on?
short answer, yes.
Okay.
So, like I mentioned earlier, that I'd planned on like taking my benefits, not saying anything about it,
Yeah.
going to live my life.
That's
And
exactly why I brought that up, is because that's what you
yeah,
had said, but
yeah, but I couldn't, I I couldn't find something that
mhm,
was life changing,
mhm,
like nothing I'd seen before, and then not say anything about it.
right.
And so at first I told some like close friends, and then that was it. And
Mhm,
then told some family, and then we've continued to like slowly ease our way into sharing it
mhm,
with others. And then there's some people that have had a pretty negative reaction to it.
hmm,
And, you know, one reaction that I got that was pretty common was, my wife would talk about it to other
mhm,
people. They're like, well, why would Chris need to do that? Why would he need to go through that?
mhm,
And I think, and really that's due to a perception of like, and a lot of people do just in
mhm,
general, is that you have no idea like what they're battling on a
right.
day-to-day basis, or what is actually going on that they're dealing with. And people sometimes just assume that like take what they see
Mhm.
for face value, and that's it. And
Well, they're
that's not
they're
always
seeing
the
that
case.
mask. They're seeing
Yeah.
the mask that you show them daily. They're not seeing everything going on for you to have to wear the mask that they're seeing of what you are going through.
Yeah. And um, so that was one reaction. But then kind of coupled with that is that um, some people had this idea that maybe, I know one person saw me as kind of like this, um, um, I don't like using this word, but for lack of a better description, but like as this hero,
Right.
and but then for me to tell them this story about this, they had to have
Mhm.
an understanding that, hey, I was broken at one point,
Right.
and so then now they're having to view me in this way that is like, which I am not, like
Hmm.
we all have our own stuff, we're
Right.
all human. Um, is that where they saw me as this like maybe, on this pedestal kind of
Hmm.
thing, but then now they're like, okay, this person was actually broken. And not only that, but then now they're doing this thing that I
Hmm.
think is just not good. Like their whole idea of me was shattered,
Hmm.
and and that was tough for them to accept, and
Right.
had a pretty negative reaction to it all. And yeah, and some people will place judgment on it, but
Hmm.
I've been surprised. I continue to be surprised about how few those people are. And something that was told to me by Amber is that the people that do put judgment on it, it's okay because they have never been at a point where they're willing to do anything to get
Hmm.
better. And I can be thankful that they've never been at a point in their life where it's just so bad that they have to try something like this.
Right.
And um, so, yeah, but we slowly started telling people,
Hmm.
and um, and really, I would look for opportune times to tell people that I cared the most about it,
Hmm.
where it might be where, I'm talking to an old teammate,
Hmm.
and like they've opened up at
Right.
a point where it's like, hey, things are not good,
Hmm.
and they're letting me know that. And I've learned to spend more time listening, because sometimes people, they just need for you to listen. They don't need you to
Yep.
try and fix it. But there also sometimes are opportunities to where it's like, okay, like I hear you.
Hmm.
I've been there too, and this is what I've done. If you're interested, I can send you some more information on it.
Hmm.
Tell my story about it, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And now I've since had several teammates that have gone through, um, and but also too, I have people that are very close to me that could easily, you know, get accepted as a grant recipient and go through the program, but are not.
Right.
And they're, circling the drain.
Hmm.
Family has come apart, substance abuse,
Hmm.
like they themselves don't expect them to be alive, a year from now, kind of
Hmm.
thing, just in a real bad spot. Um, and but I learned this a long time ago, is that sometimes you can give every resource in the world to
Hmm.
someone, and until they're willing to want to be better, like it's not going to matter, it
Yeah.
won't make a difference. And years ago, that was really hard for me to accept.
Hmm.
And another guy, Green Beret veteran, like, I mean, just similar, I mean, the same situation,
Hmm.
is substance abuse, families, coming unraveled, and DUIs, car crashes, and just trying to like hand them every
Hmm.
resource available, and the pattern just continued. And you know it wasn't until someone, I think he might have been at the swim camp, and maybe this is where I learned this at. This guy was working in the veterans court at the
Hmm.
time, and I was like, hey man, like what do you do like with these guys that like maybe they get a DUI, and
Hmm.
and alcohol's an issue for them, or whatever it may be, and like what do you how do you like fix it?
Right.
Because that's what like my mind was going to, is like I want to like help. And
Yeah.
he's like he's like at a certain point, you can't, you
Hmm.
can give them everything in the world, and until they make the decision that they want to get better,
Right.
then it's not going to matter. And but you can know that like, hey, you you offered those things for
Right.
them, but then it's the second part is on them for
Mhm.
to go through with it.
And that can be really hard for somebody, 'cause I'm kind of the same way. If I see somebody hurting and I know there's a resource and I know a way that I can help, I want to make sure I do everything I can to take care of that person. And that can be a really hard thing when that person just they don't want to get better.
Yeah.
That can be really tough to sit back and watch. And I'm not saying you have to be okay with it, but you just have to understand that you've done everything in your power to give them those resources, and they're just not ready or willing to accept it.
Yeah. That's it, man.
All right, so I feel like we'd be doing you a disservice if we did not eventually start talking about Klēnr.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like you, and I may be completely off. This is headcanon for me. Like you got to Klēnr because of this journey.
It's all a part of the journey for sure.
Yes. So okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not off base.
Yeah.
I was like, because to me, like throughout the course of this conversation, I'm like, I can totally see how Klēnr came about with you talking about, you know, chemicals and being off of caffeine, which I am getting better about caffeine. I'm not off of it yet, but I'm getting better. But just getting basically cleaning up your life as far as like
Yeah.
the things that you put in. And I use your products all the time. I use the soap every day. I wear the deodorant, the beard oil I wear because I believe in supporting my friends, but it's a good
Yeah.
product.
Appreciate that,
I
man.
would not I wouldn't still be buying it because how long ago did you launch Klēnr? Was that a year?
Oh,
About a year ago now?
October 19th.
I
And
think I was order number 3. Uh,
I think it, so we probably did some test orders,
yeah.
but you don't know this, but um, I think, I don't know if we had a date in mind. Well, we had dates in mind, but a date set that, hey, this is when the store is going to go
Mm-hmm.
live. Maybe there are versions of the website that were up, or like this
Mm-hmm.
is coming or whatever. And um, the guy that was working on the website, had built most everything out.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that there were a few things that I went in. Um, let's say this is like a Wednesday night or something,
Okay.
like Wednesday night, and like, there's like a switch in the back,
Right.
where you flip the switch and it for real will accept payments and they
Mm-hmm.
will go through. And um, I was going through checking everything after they'd done a lot of the work with it,
Right.
and I was like, okay, making some of these adjustments, adding a few things that I wanted, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna flip the switch,
Mm-hmm.
and then I sat there for a second, and then I'm like, okay, nothing happened,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was like, well, duh, like what would I expect? Like,
Right.
no
Just
one
turn it on, all of a
knows.
sudden start working.
Yeah, I was like, no one knows that this is like live
Mm-hmm.
at this moment, because
Right.
there were so many things leading up to it that we had to get tied into the website. The
Mm-hmm.
didn't have an exact day of when it was going to go live. But then, and so and this is now maybe like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I could go
Mm-hmm.
back and look at the times with this. But then the next morning, um, you were the first, you had placed an order that night. You were the first person to place an order, and then several others had come through that
Uh-huh.
night. And I was like, oh man, like I wasn't like I guess it's official now. Like
Right.
it's going,
Wait, now I got to ship stuff.
Yeah. So um yeah, that was a really special that was a special moment for
Mm-hmm.
me, especially looking back on it. And the day ended up being pretty significant, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because um, it's also the same day that um, U.S. forces went into
Yeah.
Afghanistan, 2001. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in a way, which Afghanistan was like a huge chunk of my life, and
Right.
in some ways, kind of was even after the military because of just being involved in the veteran nonprofit
Mhm.
space. And even still, like, I mean, guys that are going through vets, are, I mean, largely because of their experiences downrange. And
Right.
but it was really significant to me because it's like, hey, this day was significant so long ago
Hmm.
for a big part of my life. And then now this is almost like, okay, here's this new chapter starting
Right.
on this same day, another significant day for the future.
Hmm.
And um but yeah, that was really it was really, I mean, a very, very special day in that, yeah, and the next day when it was like, okay, I guess this is real, um, you know, celebrated,
Hmm.
outside, took some pictures and stuff like that. And but really that journey started long before then. It actually even started when we were in North Carolina, um, just looking, I mean, really starting to pay attention to what we're putting on our body. I mean, again, a
Hmm.
part of this whole like health journey.
Right.
And but then it was totally for ourselves.
Hmm.
And it started with making laundry soap, which we still do today. And I need to, I don't know if that's something we'll ever offer,
Hmm.
but um, I've been saying this for a while. I need to make a video or something so that other people can use this. Because I mean, we're using the same bar soap as
Right.
like some of the main ingredients to make this laundry soap, which then does not have all of the synthetic fragrance
Hmm.
chemical stuff that our store-bought laundry detergent has. But that's where it started. And then in 2021, I had this idea in the spring of 21, had this idea of like, um, being able to offer, cleaner products for
Right.
people. And thought about it for a long time, but when I came back from Mexico, I was like, okay, I
Hmm.
know this is what I want to do. And actually, I'd started doing some of the prep work beforehand, um, looking at what manufacturing would look like, and um, looking at, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into it,
Right.
boxes and labels and all
Yep.
these things. Um, but really hadn't like put too much money towards it,
Hmm.
Um, and then when I got back from Mexico, I was like, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And
Nice.
but they tell you you're not supposed to make any kind of big life decisions or like really any big decision right after you get back.
Right.
And you're supposed to wait a little bit. And I was like, okay, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm gonna
Hmm.
wait a little bit, And then it's like week two, it's like, okay, I know that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And then at a certain point it's like, okay, like enough, like I know this is it.
Yes.
And so then we started out, and this was not under the name Klēnr at the
Hmm.
time. Started out, let's see, we're doing, what we start out with, I know it's soaps, and then seems like it was a handful of other things. But yeah, soap was definitely at the
Hmm.
start. And where we're going to different little pop-up spots,
Right.
setting up a table and selling. And we're selling some stuff online as well. And then um, really got to the point to, and I mean, it was doing it all the ways that you can't scale it,
Right.
where I'm using just some garbage printer to print out,
Hmm.
a black and white label that I'm peeling off myself
Right.
and sticking on a box, and it's crooked, and I'm taking it
Uh-huh.
off. Okay, that box is trash now.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, just all of these ways that, you
We gotta
just
learn how to
can't.
do it wrong first, and then you
Yeah,
start doing it right.
yeah. It's just all the things that you can't do on a larger scale. And um, there's so much more to the story, but a lot of these opportunities, as they still continue to happen,
Hmm.
have come before me. And which has allowed us to, um, and so this would have been January of 2022, where really started with the brand of
Mm-hmm.
Klēnr. But I mean, there's a lot. I mean, so you think from January to October before we sold one
Right.
thing, um, a lot that was really from that period into transitioning to what it is
Mm-hmm.
now today. Um, you know, 10 months to where we could press the button on the
Right.
website and and really doing things right and in a clean way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's so much more to that story, but yeah, so in a way, it started a while back for ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
then got to a point to where it's like, okay, now we can start to offer this to some people. Okay, there's some interest in this,
Mm-hmm.
and have grown it now to what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And um yeah, and continue to work. I mean, we're still working on a lot of new stuff for in the future.
Right.
Uh, I'll mention this, but I don't want anybody to like get their hopes up on anything happening anytime soon. But there's a handful of other products that, um, I mean, I know I use on a regular basis, and I mean, really, that's all these things that we
Mm-hmm.
offer, all things that I use on a regular basis. And so it was things, yeah, and it's a strange question that I get sometimes. They're like, "Well, do you actually use this?" It's like, no, like we've made this stuff for myself,
Right.
like to start with, like, yeah, like I use all this stuff. Like these are products that I'm interested in and I
Right.
want for myself. And but yeah, I mean, there's a number of other things that I wanna add that
Mm-hmm.
are not in our current lineup, but are out there on the market that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, definitely can be done better. And it's just a matter of time of getting there. So,
Right. Well, I
but yeah,
know.
it's been. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, I know, like, whenever, because you started kind of putting little teasers out on Instagram about something coming, and I am a very big believer that if I know somebody and they're selling a thing that I would use, I'm going to at least give it that first shot. The way I want to
Yeah.
support my friend. They're doing a thing, I want to be a part of it. And when it came in, there was a handwritten thank you note, which was huge for me because I love those little that stuff right there because it shows that this isn't just coming down an assembly line. Like there's somebody that actually is grateful enough that you bought their thing that they're
Oh yeah.
writing a thank you note. Um, but it's good stuff. Like I fell in love with the soap.
Yeah.
I absolutely fell in love with the soap, and I was using another company's deodorant that was also kind of marketed as like a natural thing. It is at this point it's a significantly bigger brand, but I was having reactions to it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll try the deodorant and see. I'll be honest, didn't have high hopes. I was like, we'll see, because obviously this other natural deodorant's not working out for me.
Right.
And it's been great. Like I don't have had no reactions out of it. So it's been
That's great.
phenomenal. And my kids love the beard oil.
Yeah.
Both of my
That's good,
girls
man.
love the smell of the beard oil. So,
Thank
but
you.
it's been great. And I love the little touches that you put on stuff, like how your labeling for the soap has like the little quotes on it.
Yeah. I
That's just really cool.
I wonder how many people know that, because I think you're maybe the third person to ever mention it.
Really. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the
So
first thing you see when you open the thing. You're like, oh, look, there's a quote right there.
yeah, I wonder how many people have actually seen those. So
Well, at least I
uh,
have. So,
uh, yeah, it's good to know. Regardless, if it's only three, it's worth it for me. So
but
I think it's cool.
yeah, I remember you started doing, and I think the thing that tipped me off that you were getting ready to do Klēnr, besides that you started to kind of advertise for it, was you're not you've never been the most like prolific guy on social media. Like you are you're
Yeah.
kind of a private guy. And then all of a sudden I'm like, man,
Uh,
Chris is posting a lot. And then it's like, and then I start seeing your logo and the name Klēnr. And then the bear logo with the spare no arrows, that's probably one of the dopest logos I've seen because it's just primal and awesome.
Yeah.
But how did that logo come about? The spare no arrows with the bear, because that's pretty sick.
Yeah. So all of this, um, as you probably guess, like there's all deeper meaning behind everything.
Yeah,
Nothing is just a um, oh, this looks cool,
right.
kind of thing, and that's
You
it.
you always have a reason for everything you do. So
Yeah. And I need to, I've said this for a while. I need to put something on the website that kind of gets more into it.
mhm,
Um, but the arrowhead itself, um, the Special Forces unit patch
mhm,
is an arrowhead, and the arrowhead is, or arrow in general, is something that has been a part of Special Forces history, um, going way far back. Um, uh, even before, like, what predates Special Forces, like during World War II and all that,
okay,
OSS, First Special Service, um, and all the way back to the Indian Scouts, that same like crossed
mhm,
arrows, the arrowhead itself, were all symbols as a part of these organizations that would predate, um, Army Special Forces today.
mhm.
And so part of that is just a tie into, like, okay, this is where I came from, and I want
Gotcha.
to to honor that
Mhm,
and those same values, and just um, this value of excellence that is consistent with those. I want to carry that
mhm,
forward. And to me, that symbol is a representation of that. So that's part of it. And when I was working with, um, the folks that actually did the designs themselves,
mhm,
um, that was a conversation that we had, because they're, talking to me and like trying to pull
mhm,
out ideas and things. And then the other was the the night before, I had this dream about a bear,
mhm.
and I was like, hey, um, I'm not sure I should mention this, but like, I had this dream, this pretty significant dream. Like, there's some dreams that I have that I know I need to pay attention to.
Right.
And I don't know the meaning of this one, but I know this is a dream I need to pay attention
Mhm,
to. And told them the story about this dream with this bear in it. And they're like, okay. And and so, but the other thing with the bear too, and maybe what part of me decided to mention it, was that, when you're going through the Special Forces qualification course, there's, during Robin Sage, this unconventional warfare portion of the course, you're working with role players who are pretending to be, this resistance force,
mhm,
and your job, just as like you would do in real life, is to link up with this force, establish rapport,
mhm,
train them, assist them, advise them, conduct combat operations in order to free these people.
mhm.
In other words, instead of sending masses amounts of conventional army to
Right.
fight this battle for them, you're having this group, people of their own country,
Mhm.
having them, setting them up for success to free their people, um, to do the work for their own country,
Right.
and and so, as a part of that whole training exercise, they have a flag, and there's a bear paw on
Okay.
this flag, and it says Liberty, and that's their resistance flag that they have.
Okay.
And so, and because of that area in North Carolina, there's, bears and stuff,
Mhm,
some bears, and so I was like, that's a significant part of my background as
mhm.
well. And I was like, okay, so maybe I need to mention this and see what happens with it. And then of course, there's some design variations that
Right.
we worked through, but that's ultimately how it came about. And then just the symbolism associated with a bear,
Hmm.
um, I think is super super meaningful for me as well. And yeah, there's an aspect of wisdom and knowledge and the sense of adventure and
Hmm.
outdoors associated with bears. And um, yeah, it seemed to be a good fit all around, um, and then the next thing you know, I'm painting it on the side of a wall,
I know. I'm
which
about to say
I
you
was,
painted it on the outside of your building, so yeah, I would say it's pretty significant.
yeah, and that surprised me in itself because I had a guy that was going to do it, and
Hmm.
then it was going to be expensive, and then I was like, okay, like I'll do this, but then once it came time to do it, it's like, hey, it's going to be another 2,000 on top of the original price. I'm like,
Hmm.
man, this is like, like it's too much. It's
Right.
too much to do that. And I was like, I wonder if I can paint this myself, And I go to the paint store and like I'm talking to the lady there. I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, how much paint do you think I need? And they're
Hmm.
like, oh, you probably need this much. And I was like, okay, like what about brushes? Like, what do you think I need for that?
Right.
They're like, um, well, like you probably need this type of brush and
Right.
all this stuff. And they're like, have you done something like this before? And I'm like, no,
Nope.
never. And but yeah, it totally shocked myself
Hmm.
and it turned out awesome.
Yeah, I
And
think it looks great. I mean, I've seen
yeah,
the photos and the videos of it. It looks
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And it's cool. Like that door is a functioning door. Like you walk through the bear's mouth to go inside the building. It's cool.
That's awesome, man. I have to laugh because earlier you said you're not a guy that has a lot of hobbies, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of all the stuff that I know that you do. Like you do CrossFit, you rock climb, you like we could just keep going of all the stuff that I know. You hike, and like maybe you don't like you're a guy that's you're one of those people that if I was anywhere close, I was like, hey Chris, I'm gonna go do this kind of gnarly thing. You'd be like, great, what time are we going? like
Most likely, yeah.
yeah, you're like I've got a friend of mine in Alaska. His name's Ron, and everybody has to have a friend like this. It's like they call you up. You're like, that's a terrible idea. What time are we leaving? Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like-
Yeah. I think it goes back to, I think I mentioned this earlier, is that um like I want to get the most out of this life.
right.
And um you know yeah, I mean, I think this is almost exactly what I said earlier is that
Hmm.
like it goes back to health. Like if I am not in my best health, I mean, there's a couple layers to that, physically,
Hmm.
emotionally, spiritually. Like, I mean, I don't have to be in my very best health, but if I'm working towards that, or if
Hmm.
I'm like putting attention towards that and moving the needle in those areas, that's going to allow me to get the most out of life
Right.
and get experience as much as I can with this life. Um, and so yeah, I can't say that to me, like a hobby is something that you would do like every weekend or something. And
Gotcha.
maybe my hobby is, I don't know, is experiencing this life, but how I get there is like paying attention to my overall health
Hmm.
um and yeah, like I picture like a washcloth, that has water in it. Like you
Hmm.
wring it and all this water comes out, and maybe you do it a couple more times, but then like I still like if that is life, after you've wrung this thing so many times, like
Hmm.
and then still one more time, like see if you can just get one
Right.
more drop out of this thing. That's how I feel about life. And I feel like it's one of my purposes in life, um, is to, and this can, and maybe this applies to everyone. I don't know. I would like to think it does, but I can't say that for sure. But I think you can try and experience this life as much as you can in
Hmm.
whatever aspect. If I was in a wheelchair, and was paralyzed from the neck down, I would find ways to still experience as much as I
Hmm.
could for as long as I could. And it would just look different as all.
Right.
And that's kind of like how that whole spare no arrows phrase, like the meaning behind
Hmm.
that is um, yes, there's a health aspect so that you can get the most out of life. So you're not sparing anything. So you're not
Right.
holding back. And that's how I view life. I mean, um, I could spend a lot of time talking about this. And I was it took me the course of 22 years to graduate from college, but
Hmm.
which is really funny because the school newspaper wrote like an article on me about it, and I kind of joked that it's like, bro, it took this guy 22 years to get school done, you know?
Hey, persevered. Perseverance.
Yeah. And but during I had such a great time the last little bit of school. It was really enjoyable, but I was a TA for a class.
Hmm.
And so for 2 semesters, one semester I had around 20 students. The second I had around, it was over the summer, so it was like maybe 10 or so.
Hmm.
And and it was great having those kids because what the class was about, or one of the aspects the class was about, was learning about yourself, figuring out what you want to do in life, like
Hmm.
really want to do in
Right.
life. And um, does that are all these things matching with the person that you are, you know?
Okay.
And for some people, actually for a lot of people, what I saw was that their parents are telling them like, you need to go to school for this so you can be this when you graduate, you know? And like the student, like they don't care anything about doing that, you
Right.
know? And they're going to be miserable doing that.
Hmm.
And like they have this total passion to be, say, like a police officer
Hmm.
instead, and they love everything about that. And it turns out like all of their strengths and personality and all
Hmm.
these things, their values align more with this other thing, and they're getting ready to go on this path to go do something that they would hate for the
Right.
rest of their life. And it was just really powerful to see, and then of course the opposite is true too, is like someone's
Hmm.
like, hey, I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure. And we go through the process, and then they spend some time with someone who's doing that,
Hmm.
and they're like, it turns out like I thought this was great,
Right.
but it's even better than I could have imagined. Like this
Nice.
is what I need to be doing in life. This
Right.
is awesome. And it's great. I like both of those are equally as valuable,
Hmm.
knowing that, hey, this is not a good fit, and knowing that something else is.
Hmm.
I mean, it was just really powerful. But the danger in that is that people will start down this path,
Hmm.
and they will I'm going to go do this because, and there's so many students that they're like, because it will make a lot of money
Right.
when I graduate. And then it turns out like they hate it,
Hmm.
but now they've bought a house or a car, they have a
Hmm.
family, and they're stuck,
Right.
and they're trapped in that job.
Hmm.
And then they continue to be miserable. Or even if it's something that someone enjoys, people are have this mindset of waiting until they're 65 till they retire to start
Hmm.
living their life. And I feel like I'm living the opposite, is that I don't ever want to retire,
Right.
but I'm not going to wait till then to go do the things that I want to go do.
Hmm.
And so to me it's tragic for someone to wait so long to start living their life,
Right.
in quotes. It's you've wasted your life, in my opinion,
Hmm.
because by the time you're 65, you've probably, if you've been in this job that you hate, there's all
Hmm.
this stress that's come with it. you've neglected your health,
Yep.
or you have worse health than you should because of all of the
Hmm.
stress. And then now when it's time to go live your life, you're not in I mean, you're not in the best shape to go do it.
Right.
And and it's just uh yeah, I like I see it, a lot of people doing that are just going to work, doing something they hate every day
Right.
to hit the weekend to drink that away
Hmm.
and then hit the repeat button Monday morning and just hate getting out of bed um and so that at some point when their body's wrecked and and they're
Hmm.
older to start living their life then it's just so it's not for me anyways, I'll say that.
No, it's definitely not. And I think if people would stop and look at it more like that, like why wait until you've, like you say, quote unquote, lived your life to retire at a certain point to go do the thing? Why not do the thing now?
Yeah.
Like do it now, get that experience, bring, like for us, like we love to do stuff. Like we love camping and going out and doing things and bringing our kids
Great.
with us.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things is every time we go camping, my kids they spend too much time on devices.
Right.
It's we do what we can. They're both pretty active. My youngest does gymnastics, 2 days a week for 3 hours at a time, and my oldest does volleyball. So they're
Cool.
they're active kids and they're great kids. But every time we go camping, my favorite thing is that we're sitting outside in the woods somewhere and they're playing in the dirt, climbing
Hmm.
trees.
Yeah.
They don't care about anything with a screen.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what I love seeing. Those are the moments that I love. I love going out and taking my kids places and letting them see things, not see mom and dad waste away during the week.
Yeah.
Take them to something on the weekends and then come back and repeat the process. And they're like, man, that's what I get to look forward to when I get older. No, I don't. That's a raw deal. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And in the time like that we have with our kids is relatively limited,
Mhm.
because once they graduate high school and all that, the time that you have with them is, I mean, it's really small in comparison. And if you think about the number of spring breaks, for example, that you have with a kid, um, what is that, like 12 total?
Yeah, it's not
Like,
much.
yeah, 12 or 13. Um and that's if, in the later years they're not like in high school going off with their friends to do something during
Right.
spring break. So the number's probably even smaller. And yeah, like just taking advantage of that time.
Mhm.
I know that, I've wanted my ever since, even when my son was younger, we've taken him now to, um, yeah, 10 years old. He had been to 10 different countries, and we've just been very fortunate to
Mhm.
be able to do so. Some of that, like, I was traveling for work and
Right.
was able to, I used points for, um, my wife's ticket. My
Mhm.
ticket was covered, and we just had to pay for my son's ticket.
Mhm.
And, able to go places like Japan and stuff like that. And just have been very fortunate to be able to go to a lot of these other places. And um, but I want him to see that the world is not what we see out our front door
Right.
everywhere else. There's people that they can't turn a faucet and have hot
Mhm.
water come out of it or clean water come out of it.
Right.
And that, yeah, there's so many other cultures, and you can learn a lot more from you can learn a lot from all these different cultures and different people that are out there. And I think there's so much value in that. And there's a great Mark Twain quote that I really like, that um, I have it on the website, but it talks about the things like prejudice, ignorance, um, all of these kind of like, negative things.
Hmm.
Um, they basically don't survive to travel.
Right.
If you're able to travel and see that, hey, there's different cultures and people do things
Hmm.
differently and see the world differently that you do, it opens your perspective on things,
Hmm.
and it makes it much harder to be in those negative spaces, I think.
Right. I know. Like, so Kelly's never been stationed over, even though they consider Alaska overseas. Kelly's never been stationed like in Germany, Japan, Belgium, anything like that. We've always been in the U.S. And I keep joking that once our kids are out of high school, if Kelly's still liking what she's doing, we ought to try to get an assignment overseas, because then, when spring breaks happen for college, instead of the girls saying like, "Oh, we're going down to Panama," they're gonna be like, "Well, my parents are in Germany, and that seems like a whole lot more fun than doing
Mm,
stuff here." And we could bring them over, and at that point, be able to show them kind of different things that are going on. Because I, I'm kind of right there with you. I want my kids to have a more worldly view on things
yeah,
and understand that, you know everything isn't what you see on TV or YouTube. Like, there's a whole
right.
giant world out there full of wonder and magic, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, yeah,
And like, it's important to experience those things, and to
absolutely.
share that with our kids.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm like you, man. I try and take the family everywhere I can, you know, and being outdoors. I mean, you can't beat it.
No, you can't. That's my recharge space. Like, whenever it's, and my wife too. My wife's a big trail runner. She loves trail running, and that's kind of both of our, when we're like, just like, okay, I am done. Let's go camping. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
even not even that, just, hey, there's one thing that's cool about where we're at right now. There's just a boatload of trails. Like, I wasn't expecting it, but there's just all kinds of trails everywhere. And so we can drive 20 minutes down the road, and there's this absolutely gorgeous trail that like goes down by this little river. And like, they have a spot where they actually have fossils. Kids can like dig for fossils on the riverbed. And you're you're in nature, because all you can see around you is trees and water, but you're 20 minutes from home. So it's like a nice little, like,
that's
quick
great.
recharge. and then,
Yeah,
and then and then go back home.
yeah, that's great, man. I usually have to drive a ways to get to some, you know,
Well, you're
um,
in College Station, so I mean, there's I don't know. I fully admit I don't know a lot about that area other than Texas A&M. So,
yeah. I mean, it's a great town. I think the people here are what, I mean, it's tough to beat,
mhm,
because we'll do these trips and stuff. Like, we just got back from Colorado not too long ago,
mhm,
and which was an amazing trip. There's a peak that I've been trying to summit for maybe the last 4 years, and something has happened to where it just hasn't worked out.
mhm.
And we're able to summit this um, in July. But on the way back, it's always this like, man, why do we live where we live?
Right.
Like, when there's this just amazing
Mhm,
place, and outdoor space. There's so much to do outdoors. And even when we're in North Carolina in July as well, um, just, I mean, spending so much time up in the mountains and
mhm.
mountain biking and rock climbing there. And, um, you know, we're always like, man, why do we live where we live? But
Mhm.
I think the thing that, we don't have mountains or like even a ton of like really great outdoor space, and it's 1 million degrees outside right now. But um, but the people here, I think, are just that is something that is hard to find anywhere else.
Mhm.
And so, um, and I was talking about it with another guy recently who just came back from Utah, and it's yeah, it's one of those things that like if I had to pick one or the other,
Hmm.
as much as I love the outdoors, I really do. I would have to choose people
Yeah.
um, over, an amazing outdoor space. Because ultimately, like if things are tough, it's cool you have the outdoors, but
Hmm.
like having good people around you is really what's
Yeah.
going to get you through those tough things. And um, yeah, so yeah, it's a great place. It really is. We just don't have quite the scenery that other places do, or
Well,
temperatures.
and truth be told, back whenever I was an undergrad, I looked hard at moving to Bryan.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, they sent a because I used to be in law enforcement. I used to be a cop. I was a cop for 8 years. But while I was an undergrad, we had a career fair, and the guy from Bryan College Station was just everything he was saying. I was like, I can see why people want to go there.
Yeah,
He just the way he was talking, the you could tell how much he loved the area that he was working in.
yeah,
And so me and Kelly, we looked hard at it, and then she decided to go back to school and finish off her degree. So we ended up staying, but that's a whole nother story. But no, we looked hard at it, so I could see why you like it there so much.
yeah,
But also, you
yeah.
you have you have a lot of history there too, because I mean, there's a I don't remember if it was Houston, or was it where you're at in College Station when the floods happened, and
Yeah.
there was a picture of you. Again, this goes back to what I said about you being one of the most selfless people I know. There's a picture of you walking through flooded streets, towing a boat behind you to help out your neighbors.
Yeah, so that was Hurricane Harvey in
Yeah,
Houston.
Harvey.
We were living in College Station at the time, and it started with um, so my wife has family in Houston, and I'm trying to
Okay.
think. I mean, we ended up going down to Houston, maybe over the course of a week every
Hmm.
day. But I'm trying to think how it started. It might have been um, my wife's grandma. Like the neighborhood was flooding
Hmm.
all around her, and the water's continuing to rise.
Right.
And it became a question of um, if she stays, like there won't be an option to
Right.
get her out. And so me and a friend of mine went down to Houston, which is a really strange sight, seeing everything. Just so much stuff flooded
Mm.
and all that. We got down there and we were able to um, get her out. But then while we were there, I mean, her at that time, her house was not flooded,
Hmm.
but pretty well every house around her was already flooded.
Right.
And I can remember there's an intersection that's like a couple houses down from her in her neighborhood, and it ended up being this kind of collection point to where we were helping people like
Hmm.
they're I mean these houses already started to have water in them, but we were um, helping out people as best we could there,
Hmm.
and there's um, maybe a couple first responders that were there at that intersection kind
Hmm.
of directing boats or whatever. And I mean you could tell like even early on that like that guy had been there, you know, like 24 hours straight,
Right.
hadn't slept kind of thing. And and then that would go on for a while. But yeah, we're um, then taking people from that kind of collection point and then driving them to a hotel,
Hmm.
or um, an ambulance would they could get to that intersection but couldn't get any further back
Right.
because the water levels, and carrying people to the ambulance or whatever. And so we did that for as long as we felt like we could help.
Right.
And then um, and then we just started going back each day. And at one point, um, yeah, and brought more people to go back
Mhm.
into Houston to help, and um, ended up doing more of the same, in
Mhm.
different spots as um, maybe these reservoirs and things ended up breaking loose, and where a neighborhood wasn't flooded the day
Mhm.
before, like
No, it
the next
was.
day, it's like totally underwater. And yeah, it was a lot of that, like shuttling
Mhm.
people out to, um, from where their neighborhood was out to, I'm trying to think on some of these other days, we weren't bringing them to hotels, but I think they had some more resources in place. Like
Mhm.
maybe we're bringing them back to another spot that, some emergency services were there
Mhm.
to be able to house people or what, whatever. But um, and then that turned into um, tearing out, once the waters went
Mhm.
down, tearing out all the sheetrock and stuff like that. So and it turns out there's like a whole process for that,
Oh yeah.
like you cut the sheetrock at a certain
Mhm.
level, and then so that like it doesn't get all moldy
Yep.
in the house, and um, started doing all that. But we did that for maybe a day or two, and yeah, and then that was one of the times that I was going back to A&M.
Mhm.
I had class then, and it was like, okay, like I have to go back to school, and
Right.
um, or start school, I should
Mhm.
say. And that was kind of interesting. So, Becca was with me, my wife, and
Mhm.
um, she was helping for some of that. And it was kind of a shock for her, but because going down to Houston and it's just wrecked, and
Right.
like you're seeing things in a whole different way.
Mhm.
And then turning around, coming back up to College Station, going
Mhm.
into the first day of class, and everybody's walking around like
Like no,
nothing's
yeah.
nothing's happened, or and I'm like, and Becca realized how similar that is to someone who maybe is, you know, fighting it out
Mhm.
overseas, and then you come back home and you're walking around in the grocery store or whatever,
Yep.
and like people are just going about their daily lives. I'm like,
Right.
I mean, that's just how it is, like,
Mhm.
uh, and so it's kind of an eye-opening moment for her. But um, yeah, uh, you know, that was a awful thing that happened to Houston, but
Mhm.
um, I hate to phrase it this way, but it was a great moment for me
Mhm.
because um, it's something close to what you would see, or I have seen in the military, in the it is one of the greatest expressions of love
Mhm.
that you can see and experience. And what I mean by that is that nobody cared about what you drove, what
Right.
neighborhood you lived in, who you voted for, what the color of your skin was,
Mhm.
any of that stuff. Like it was just everybody saw people as human beings
Yep.
who needed help, and they were like, okay, I need to help
Mhm.
these other humans.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, in the midst of all of this like destruction, it's one of the most beautiful things to see
Yeah.
is people risking their lives, everything. I mean, there are people that bought boats to be able
Mhm.
to go down to Houston to help, people out of their houses and things.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that. It's uh, just a great thing to see, people just, um, yeah, they're unconditionally
Mhm.
caring for one another, and all the divisiveness and everything was gone. And yeah, in the midst of all of that,
Mm.
there's this beautiful aspect to it. And
Well, and you're not wrong at all, because I mean, I've said it every time there's some, giant natural disaster or man-made disaster that happens. It's to use the Mr. Rogers quote, whenever things are going bad, look for the helpers.
mm,
And
yeah,
to me, that's when you see actual human nature, is
yeah,
whenever everything's just going so wrong, and then you see scores of people coming out to help and doing everything they can to help out another human, because of exactly what you
yeah,
said. Like at that point, anything that you hold as far as like what you say publicly or what you say on social media, that's all gone. Another human being is hurting and needs help. People are helping.
yeah,
And it really is like, those are the moments that I'm like, okay, there's still a chance for humanity, because it's still there. It's still,
yeah.
the people are still wanting to help and be good.
Yeah, I think I have a very positive outlook
Mm-hmm.
on the planet as a whole. I think, yes, that is very much there
Mm-hmm.
in the core of us, and I think it's there it, more than just deep down inside
Mm-hmm.
someone. We just get told a different story through the news
Yes.
and social media and
Mm-hmm.
everything else, and it makes it seem like these other people, I mean, especially like other Americans,
Mm-hmm.
are our enemy, you know,
Right.
and it's that's the story that we get told. But you spend time with any of these people
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, maybe are very, air quotes, different from
Right.
you, and you'll find that it's hard to hate someone,
Yeah.
it's hard to hate that person, because you'll find that you know, we're more alike than we seem to be different. And I think that, as time goes on, we're struggling towards a better future.
Mm-hmm.
The picture that gets painted for us makes it look like it's something different, like that World War III is about to happen and
Right.
all this other stuff. And this is something else that, like, I didn't mention earlier, but a part of my daily practice is that I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
Like, I don't watch it at all. I stopped a little over 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm probably like 20% happier because of it,
It's that's an easy correlation to make, because I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's um I miss yeah, well, I don't miss is the wrong word. Initially, I missed being informed on
Mm-hmm.
things, but um you end up finding out about the things that are important anyways,
Right.
um I will say there are times where I'm like, um I had no idea that there was a fire in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe people knew about it like 3 days before I did, but
Mm-hmm.
at some point I end up finding out about it. And then um I yeah, I limit my social media stuff pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. Like, I'm pretty conscious about who I follow,
Mm-hmm.
um and Facebook has this great feature where you can be friends with someone, but you don't have to see their stuff,
Yes.
and like
I've
like
had to do that for quite a few people.
yeah, and I'll give people a chance,
Mm-hmm.
but after the second or third time, it's this like hate being spewed. It's like, bro, I
Right.
love you, but I just I I can't see your stuff every day,
Yeah. Well, it's that whole aspect of controlling your peace, and controlling who you are allowing access to your energy and who you're giving your energy to, because
Yeah,
going all the way back to what you were talking about earlier about doing the work on the back end. If you just keep allowing, for lack of a better term, toxic people around you, eventually it's going to rub off, unless you are really, really like strong minded and you know working towards something with a purpose. I mean, that negativity will eventually rub off.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's all kinds of studies and quotes and stuff about that, like you're the average income of the like five people
Right.
you're around or whatever. And that translates into other things, not just monetary value, but
Mm-hmm.
I think um, Roy Benavides, Roy Benavidez, who's a Medal of Honor recipient, um, Green Beret out of Vietnam.
Hmm.
Something that he used to tell his family members, I learned this from his nephew, was that he said, "Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are."
Mm,
So
that's
if you're
good.
surrounding yourself with people that, you know, it's a lot of negativity
Hmm.
or um, it's a lot of hate towards others, whatever,
Hmm.
like you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna start absorbing that. And the
Yep.
opposite is true too, is that um, I mean, kind of like what I was talking about with Beck and I both being on this whole healing journey,
Hmm.
with both of us being on that, we're just propelling ourselves forward that much faster,
Right.
Um, and so it's very true. I think, and I have to balance that too because there's, this part of me that I want other people to have what I have.
Hmm.
And, um, but I've learned to recognize that, you know, not everybody is there at a point to where they can accept that.
Right.
Um, and the other is like, if I'm spending too much time with people that, you know, have are not wanting to move the needle themselves yet, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Um, I have to be careful about spending too much time in that space that
Right.
I don't suffer from it.
Right.
And it took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah, I can totally see that because if you pour into somebody that isn't wanting to move the needle and you just keep pouring and pouring and pouring, eventually you sit there and go, well, what's the point? And then your cup runs empty.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's the old expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have
yeah,
to be careful with that.
yeah. It's interesting. A lot of it has to do with the person's attitude,
Mhm.
mindset, that kind of thing. And I've looked at hiring some people over the last couple months, and um, had one guy come in who I think is very qualified,
Mhm.
and but there was this negative attitude
Mhm.
that was there, not towards me or
Right.
anything that we're doing, but just about life,
Mhm.
And after spending enough time with this person, I was like, uh, like even if they were like the best at
Right.
whatever, like this attitude piece, like I can't be around it,
Yeah.
like it's too much. And I've seen the opposite where it it really shines the light on it when you meet someone who's the opposite of that, where it's
Mhm.
this like, and I'm still working on this myself, but like staying out of judgment of others, not talking bad about other
Mhm.
people, like one guy who came in just I it'd be really hard pressed to have this guy say something bad about somebody else.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, what a like great attitude. And
Mhm.
like that's something I'm working on myself. And I've learned that if you are judging other people, like you do that same to yourself.
Right.
Like you are being hard on yourself. And if you're doing that to yourself, like you're not being your authentic self, you're holding
Mhm.
back. Um, and yeah, you're hurting yourself. And yeah, so I mean it's a mindset thing.
Mhm.
And um and so I was talking to some other guys from another company, and they've been out of college maybe months,
Mhm.
so fairly new out of college, and they're talking about GPA one day, and I was like, and how important it was and all this
Right.
stuff, and I was like, yeah, but I mean, what does that matter, you know?
Mhm.
And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I've been on, and I get each company's different, but I've
Right.
been on a number of hiring committees, and never once did we look at GPA.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I get it if you want to go to graduate program,
Mm-hmm.
further education, then yeah, GPA is important. But if you're just wanting to get your degree and move on, like, I would much rather take somebody who had a just passing grade, a
Mm-hmm.
2.0, and has a great attitude versus somebody who has a 4.0
Mm-hmm.
who, you know, like, they have a terrible mindset,
Right.
terrible attitude. Um, and and I think it's for that reason is that, yeah, I mean, you want to be around people that are not going to suck away your
Mm-hmm.
energy on a daily basis.
I mean, who you want to be around? You want to be around the guy that comes and be like, I know exactly how to do this. I can do it better than anybody else, or the guy that comes and be like, you know what? This looks like a really awesome place to work, and I'm going to do everything I can to be awesome for you. Like, I'd rather be around the second guy all day long.
Oh yeah,
You
for
know?
sure.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot that comes with it too, is that there's always obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
and there's two ways to approach it. Is that like, oh, well, there's this obstacle, like I can't do that, or
Right.
it's like, okay, there's this obstacle, but we have to figure out a way to, like, we can't go over it,
Mm-hmm.
but can we go around it? Can we go underneath it?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to figure out a solution for whatever the problem is
Right.
versus like, oh, there's this problem and that's it, it's over with. And yeah, there's so much to it, but um, yeah, definitely who you surround yourself with is super important.
Yeah, I so during my time in law enforcement, I worked in corrections. I've actually I always kind of laugh about it because I started my career working corrections, and the last part of like the last year that I was a cop, I was working corrections, and I learned very quickly that at the very first part of my career of this, you don't judge people because some of the nicest people I've ever met were doing
Mm,
time.
yeah,
They made one guy like he freely admitted he was like, hey, I've got a problem. He said sometimes my problem gets too much for me. He said I end up in jail. He said and then I leave and I'm better for a while. And I'm like, that's great, but if you recognize the problem, why don't you take the further steps once you leave? And he was like, I can't break the cycle. And
yeah,
it and in my head, I'm thinking you don't want to, but the bigger thing is like some of the nicest people I've met were in jail.
yeah.
They made a mistake,
Oh yeah,
and so that whole don't judge people. I'll give you a chance to prove who you are.
yeah.
I don't need to sit here and look at you and make a decision. Eventually, you're going to show me who you are, and I don't need to make that decision myself.
Yeah, part of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work
Mm-hmm.
is he talks about um, both Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Bruce Lipton talk about this about subconscious programming
Mm-hmm.
is that, and they give an age which maybe is somewhere around in the 30s, is that once you get to a certain age, in other
Mm-hmm.
words, like 95% of the way that you think and interact with the world
Mm-hmm.
is all subconscious programming.
Huh.
And so Bruce Lipton talks a lot about this, that why it's so important from up until the age 7 is because a child at that age is, I mean, their brainwave state is in theta, I believe. But either way, it's this brainwave state where it's
Mm-hmm.
just receive, like total receive mode.
Right.
And it's just observing, what they see, hear, and that starts laying the foundation for programming for later in life, and
Mm-hmm.
which is why you see a lot of these things that end up being generational, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's like um, it could be substance abuse or physical abuse, because that is the programming that the child received.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and over time, like some of this, we we're still getting some of this programming, but it's not to as great of an extent.
Right.
But at a certain point, it becomes whatever it is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why it can be so hard for people to make any kind of change.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say that people don't like change, but really it's much deeper than that.
Oh yeah.
It's the subconscious programming that is there that makes it so hard for people to make a adjustment. And I I try to be good about this to where it's like, um, you know, there's a lot of things that I could say that like you should be doing this differently,
Mm-hmm.
like this person should be doing this differently. And really like taking one out of all of these things that we can do to better ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a huge step forward. And that in itself, like breaking one aspect of that programming is
Mm-hmm.
huge alone. And but like I said, like I have to recognize that how I approach things can be sometimes more, again, it's just like all in or not type
Right.
mentality. And I recognize now that's not for everybody, but but that shows the power of what this programming is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's things that I recognize in myself, um, that I still work on, where things that were shown to me, not like someone actually like, hey, I'm going to show you how to get
Right.
angry about this,
Yeah, for sure.
but it's what I observed. And therefore, today, there's things that like when I can't find a tool or something,
Mm-hmm.
I start like I'm getting angry about it or something. But this is strange to think about your own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is that it's like, okay, why am I getting angry? I'm going to find
Right.
this thing at some point and it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be fine. I'm not rushed.
Right.
And, but it's this what subconsciously
Mm-hmm.
has been there, and it takes a lot to be able to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, it's fascinating. And I just love this kind of work, again, to continue to grow.
Right.
But yeah, it is a for real thing that at a certain point becomes ingrained in people and becomes very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're gonna over a weekend decide like, okay, I'm gonna change all these things and then start doing something different without a lot of resistance from your mind and body.
Right. Yeah, because your mind is like, but we've been doing this thing for this long, this
Hmm.
way. Why do I need to change it now? And you really have to tell yourselves because this thing isn't working.
Yeah.
It's not. It's we need to fix this because this isn't getting the job done.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that go into that too. I mean, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what we're talking about with the people you're around,
Yep.
your environment, if it's an unhealthy environment and you stay in it, it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be an uphill battle. Or, it already is, but then,
Mm-hmm.
that's not making it any easier unless you get out of that.
Right. Absolutely. But Chris, I have kept you on here for almost 3 hours, and I know you have got other things that you need to get done today. But I truly appreciate all the time that you spent with me. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and it was one that I was really looking forward to, and it's been great. So thank you, Chris, for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, man. I'm glad you reached out. So yeah,
Absolutely.
happy to be
So,
on.
so if people want to find out more about Klēnr or more about Cadre Chris, where can they find you?
So the website for Klēnr is Klēnr.com,
Mm-hmm.
Klenr. And then social media, Instagram is what we're on the most, which
Okay.
is at Klēnr Products.
Okay.
I think if you search the same thing in Facebook, you'll find it there too. Um, and then uh, my personal Instagram, I think it is at CT_Chris_official. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think
Some
that's right.
variation of that.
This is how you know that you're like not a social media guy. You're like, I don't know what my handle is.
Yeah, it's something like that. And um and then Facebook is Cadre Chris CT.
Now,
Um,
does Vets have any social media that people can
yeah,
find? Because I'd like to
yeah.
put that information in the show notes too.
Same with Instagram. There's his, I believe it's at Vet Solutions
Okay.
is the Instagram. And then the website is, um, I believe it's vetsolutions.org.
Okay.
But there's and for people who want to, I mean, just learn more about um, plant medicines and just the research and everything associated with that, Vets has um, a e-course that's available to anyone. It's free,
Mhm.
you know. Doesn't matter if you're in the military or not. You can take this e-course. It's self-paced and just tons and tons of great information on everything to do with plant medicines and all that. I recommend it to everybody who has, like, if they have someone who's going through treatment
Mhm.
or if they're interested in themselves, like it's just a great starting point to learn more about that. And that's on their website as well.
Awesome. I'm gonna make sure to put all those links in the show notes. That way people can find it.
Cool.
Um, but again, thanks a lot, Chris. This has been great catching up with you and actually like help having this conversation because it's like I told you, like, people have stories that need to be told, and you know, it's been really good for me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks
but
again for having me, man. Appreciate
anytime,
it.
man. Well, you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch up again later.
All right. We'll see you.
All right, later, bud.